Hey everyone, it's the Chaplain here, coming to you with a little bit more of BBR Explained. I think this is the absolute last video that I'm going to do in this series. It has been a joy and a pleasure hanging out with you, making these videos. I am just kind of done. I think I went through all the things, all the little nuanced rules, etc., that people need to know to play this game well. I'm working on strategy videos, and by that I mean turn one strategy videos, because this game is very reactive. Even though you can be a proactive player, there's still some reaction involved. So, Germany does XYZ, Russia should do ABC, etc. So I'm working on some strategy videos. I'm also working on some fun videos, some goofy videos. One of them will be posted in just a day or so from this video being posted. So with this being the last video, I wanted to take some time and go over some of the units and their characteristics, their profiles, their attack, defense, value, movement, etc. Most of this you already know, but just in case you didn't, that's the purpose of this video. Some of these things have been discussed in previous videos, like target select, or super carriers or super battleships, etc. But just to make sure we cover all of the bases, I wanted to make sure that we went through units. And so, towards the back of your BBR rulebook, starting on page 39, you can see all the different unit profiles and what they do. First one I'm going to talk about today is AAA, Anti-Aircraft Artillery. So this is a neat little unit here, hand model. This is a neat little unit here. This little thing can shoot at some planes that are flying over you. If you're being attacked, pardon the gross hand. If you're being attacked, you can use this to shoot at planes. It costs 5 IPCs to purchase. It has no attack value, and it has a defense roll of 1. Now, if you have ATC, radar ATC as your tech, then he'll throw it a 2 or less. He can move 1 on non-combat only, and he can be taken as a casualty if he's a defender. So the first thing that happens when someone comes to attack you, if they have planes, you throw AAA. He throws, this one guy can throw 3 dice, and that means he can hit 3 planes. So it's pretty powerful, pretty potent, although he is throwing a 1 or less, which doesn't exist. You have to hit him. You have to get a 1, which is 16.5% chance of hitting on the sucker. So he's a good unit to have. He can be a casualty, like I said. So if you're getting attacked, I'm gonna kneel here. Ugh. You're getting old, Bob. If you're being attacked and you get some hits that you have to allocate, focus here. Here we go. Focus. Nope, you don't want to focus. Fine. He can be taken as a casualty. So you have a AAA gun and 4 infantry, and you're being attacked, and your guy gets 3 hits against you. You can lose 1, and then you lose 2, 3 of your other units. So that's AAA. Next thing I'm going to talk about is infantry. And if you notice, I'm using my UK pieces here because I have painted them and dipped them. So they look a little bit weathered. The video here, the lighting down here doesn't do it justice on camera, but in person it looks pretty sweet. Not as good as Lieutenant Dan's or Joe's or Sired even, or Hambone, and a lot of the other guys that have weathered their pieces, but I mean, it looks okay. I guess it looks a little splotchy on there, but whatever. They're mine. The next one is infantry. This little guy is cool. It's probably the most versatile unit in the game. Come on, there you go. Probably the most versatile unit in the game. Probably the most underrated unit in the game, honestly, because he costs 3 IPCs and he attacks at a 1. He does defend at a 2. He can only move 1 space. But in my combined arms video, I showed you if you pair him up with an artillery, he now attacks at a 2. So infantry are good. I don't think I've ever been in a game where I haven't bought tons of infantry, no matter what country I'm playing. So, infantry. As we listen to a song from Gladiator movie. Oh, I switched knees. I don't know if you heard that pop, but I pretty much just died. The next unit we're going to talk about here is the artillery. This is neat, a great unit, because it has a tech that will help advance it. You can get advanced artillery, which means he can support 2 units. He can move with tanks. He can blitz. He can do all kinds of stuff, but he costs 4. He attacks and defends at a 2. Obviously he can take 1 hit because he's 1 unit. But artillery are very nice. If you're going infantry heavy, you should almost always try to get 1 or 2 of these little puppies. They're pretty cool. I like them. Mechanized infantry, and I know I'm flying through these, but, you know, bear with me. As we get into different units, some of them get more complex. So mechanized infantry, why aren't you focusing, you turd? Come on. Mechanized, I guess that works. This attacks and defends at a 1 and a 2. It moves at 2. It can blitz if it has a tank with it. I don't know why I'm choosing to use the back of my hand to show you these units. I guess because to hold them like this. Anyway, why don't we just do that? Oh, my daughter woke up, so I have to pause the video. Sorry. Alright, well, I am back, and it was literally 25 hours ago that I paused the video, but for you, it was just a momentary lapse in time. I was discussing mechanized infantry. Like I said, they attack at a 1, defend at a 2. They move at a distance of 2 spaces. They cost 4 IPCs. They're really cool because they can be paired up with artillery to make them attack at a 2 at a 1-to-1 ratio. So 1 mechanized and 1 artillery. Now you have 2 at 2. I like mechanized a lot. They have a special ability in that they can blitz if they're accompanied with a tank. So the tanks have the ability to blitz through an unoccupied enemy territory and then onto another territory if they so choose. And if you have a tank with your mechanized, they can join in that blitz. Let's see. Let me see here if I can give you an example. There does seem to be some confusion on blitzing itself. So let's focus here. How about you stay there? Perfect. Alright, so let's say this is a British territory, and the Brits have a I'll just scoot them all out of the way. The Brits have an infantry over here. Well, the Germans have a tank and a mechanized. So they can move in a blitz, claim El Alamein, and then move into Egypt and attack the infantry. If this was just like this without a tank, he would have to stop his movement to claim that territory. If it was a tank by itself, obviously he can blitz. But if you accompany mechanized with a tank, they can both blitz. Well, the tank can already blitz. So there's no upgrade for the mechanized, which is okay. It happens. But anyway, alright, the next piece we're going to talk about, the next unit rather, is going to be the tank. The dutiful, beautiful tank. There we go. That's a nice focus. How about them apples? Anyway, the tank is probably one of my favorite units. It costs 6. In the original, it cost 5 IPCs, which was just a steal, to be honest with you. But now, and in many of the other versions, it does cost 6. It attacks and defends at a 3, which is great. It has a movement of 2. I've already demonstrated to you what blitzing is, so I won't go into that again. There is the upgrade. If you watched my research and development video called technology stuff, I think is what I called it. You can get heavy tanks wherein your tanks now attack at a 4. With an attack of 4, that makes it that is the most powerful unit in the game per dollar spent. And don't forget that tanks can be used in combined arms when you pair them with a tactical bomber. It increases the attack of the tactical bomber, which is great. The next piece we're going to talk about is the cavalry unit. And only China and Mongolia have cavalry units. But this little guy actually came from a Risk game in the 90s, because that's all I had at the time. So I've painted these guys green. Oop, he fell. Actually, that might be better. I don't know. He fell. I do have some infantry. I do have some cavalry now for the Russians that I use in Mongolia. But cavalry are cool. They can only be purchased by the Chinese. And they have an attack of 2, a defense of 1, and a movement of 2. They do cost 4 IPCs. Cavalry do have the ability to blitz very much exactly actually like a tank, but they may not blitz through a territory that has an enemy unit or facility, so, you know, kind of limiting. Obviously, a tank can't blitz through a territory with an enemy unit either, but anyway, cavalry, great unit. Next, we're going to move into the air units, and I realize that I have put them in a different order than what most of you are probably used to seeing them in. The first unit we're going to talk about is the fighter. Now, this little guy is very diverse, very universally renowned as, this is a Spitfire for the Brits, universally renowned as one of the most versatile pieces in this game. And I like the fighter a lot. The fighter costs 10 IPCs to purchase. It has an attack value of 3 and a defense of 4. It can move 4 spaces. So a lot of the air power when it comes to movement, sometimes there's confusion when you move into the sea zones, you know, what's their movement. So Sumatra has no air base. This plane is here. He's going to fly 1 into the sea zone, 2, 3, 4, whatever. His last movement has to be a place to land. If he was based on this carrier, he's always considered to be in the air. So it doesn't cost him 1 to go from the carrier into the sea zone. He's technically always in the air in the sea zone. Now, if this was a French fighter or an American fighter or a Russian fighter, they are not always in the air. They are considered cargo. So if this were to get hit, the plane would go down with it. But he's in the air. So if there's a sneak attack or something to that effect, he's not affected. He's in the air. So that's really neat. They can act as fighters. Fighters can act as interceptors or escorts in strategic bombing runs. And what that means is that if they can reach there and back, you know, have a safe landing spot, then they can accompany a strategic bomber. They are involved in the interceptor escort round of combat, which is just 1 round of combat. And I think they have to get 2s or less, and then they retreat from battle. So the escort and interceptor only accounts for 1 round of combat, and then if the bombers survive, you get to move on to your strategic bombing run. But anyway, that's fighters. They do have the technology upgrade of advanced fighters, jet fighters, where they will now attack at a 4, which would make it half as pricey as a battleship with the same damage. The only bonus to having a battleship is that it can take 2 hits. But bang for your buck, if you have jet fighters, 2 of these cost the same as 1 battleship, and it can do more damage, exponentially more damage. So fighters are awesome. The next air unit we're going to talk about is the tactical bomber. This unit is pretty versatile as well. This unit is really neat because it has a bunch of different things that it can do. So first, it costs 11 IPCs. It has an attack and defense of 3, but if you remember from the combined arms video, if you pair him with a fighter or you pair him with a tank, he now attacks at a 4, which is huge. He also has the ability to target select. I've already done a video on target selection, so make sure you check that out for those details. He can be on or off a carrier. The fighter also can be on or off a carrier. They're the only 2 planes that can land on a carrier. Strategic bombers cannot. So there's that. But this guy's really neat because he can also do tactical bombing raids. They can participate in normal combat, or they can attack air or naval bases. And that will be not a video that I'm going to make for this series, but maybe in the future I'll make a strategic bombing run video, when to do it, when not to do it. Corporal Clegg has a great video on when to do it, if it's even worth doing it monetarily, etc., etc. So anyway, that's the tactical bomber. He can raid air and naval bases to do damage to them. He can land on a carrier. He can do combined arms. He can target select. All great things. The next air unit I'm going to talk about is the strategic bomber. Now this guy, this one's a heavy hitter. He costs 12. In the original game, in the classic game, he cost 15, which was just ridiculous. He attacks with 2 dice at a 2 or less. He defends at a 1. He can move 6, which is great. If you make him an air transport, which is a previous video to this one, he can move 2 infantry. If you upgrade him to a heavy bomber, he now throws 4 dice on combat at 2 or less, which is incredibly strong. He can do 4 damage. One unit can damage or destroy 4 units. That's crazy. But if you get the heavy bomber upgrade, then he can also carry, instead of 2 infantry, he can carry a piece of equipment, which would be artillery, mechanized infantry, tank, and 1 infantry. So this guy can do a strategic bombing raid, which means he can hit your factories. The ability to damage someone's factory is just crazy, because then they have to spend money to fix it, right? In my game against Lieutenant Dan last year, we played a little 1v1, and I attacked the factory in Western Germany a couple times, did some damage to it. He ended up being able to build very minimal units out of there, so these guys are pretty neat for that. I like to have them. I think that heavy bombers are a great tech to have, so definitely into that. They can also do the combat drops. You know, if they're going to be a cargo plane, then they can drop units into territories for combat and non-combat, and I did that. I talked through that portion when I did my para-drop video, so check that out. Let's move into the C units. Let's start off with the transport. That is not in the frame, doofus. All right, let's do this. The transport. Transport's great. It costs 7. Flip the page. Where's it at? God bless America. It does. It costs 7. It has an attack of 0 and a defense of 0. In my combined arms video, I mentioned that if you pair it up, 2 of them defend at 1. But it was mentioned to me today, and I forgot to mention to you, if you do the tech upgrade of advanced transports, improved transports, he can transport now 3 units. 1 of them has to be an infantry, and he also defends by himself at a 1. So that's pretty cool. Otherwise, he has no defense value. Traveling by himself, he has none. He can move 2, and he can carry 2 things as long as 1 of them is an infantry. If you get the tech of improved transports, he can carry 3 things as long as 1 of them is an infantry. So that's pretty cool. They're really neat, but they're also kind of not the best. For example, they don't block enemy movement. They have to be chosen last in combat, so you can't say, like in the classic game, you would just buy transports and they would be fodder. You can't do that anymore. They are chosen last. So I have a battleship and a transport. I have to take the battleship as a casualty first. They cannot load units in a hostile sea zone, so there are some restrictions to their abilities. So if you have a transport loaded and you want to go into hostile territory and try to take it, you have to make sure the sea zone is clear first, which requires other ships or planes. So definitely don't want to leave these sitting around, roaming around, laying around for nothing, right? You want to make sure you protect your transports. So anything I missed on that, just mention it in the comments. Next, we'll talk about destroyers. The destroyer is a pretty neat ship, in my opinion. It really has a lot of uses. It only costs 8 IPCs, and it attacks and defends at a 2. Oh, come on, focus. There we go. It attacks and defends at a 2. As you've noticed, my British pieces are pretty well covered, in that I painted them and then dipped them. But my dipping process is a little bit different than other people's. So this guy looks really, really dipped compared to some of the other pieces. But anyway, he attacks and defends at a 2. All ships move at 2 unless leaving from a naval base. He doesn't have any tech upgrades, but he does cancel out the submarine and its secret strike and target select, which is cool. So I really like this guy. I'm just skimming really quick. making sure I'm not forgetting anything. If you are attacking or defending and you want planes to be able to hit subs, you got to have one of these guys present. You cannot bring a sub to the surface without a destroyer. So subs can never hit planes, but planes can hit subs whenever there's a destroyer present. That's that. Next is a cruiser. This is a pretty neat unit. It costs 12. It attacks and defends at a 3. When paired with a battleship, it defends at a 4 at a 1-to-1 ratio. It can move 2 again. This is the unit that, in addition to battleships, can do offshore bombardment shots. So cruisers were great at shooting offshore. Battleships could shoot 20 plus miles, but cruisers were also used a lot to shoot at units on shore and even beyond the shore to help soften up the landing spots. Cruisers are great. There's really nothing else to say about a cruiser except Corporal Clegg. I'll mention him again. Corporal Clegg has a video called Are Cruisers for Losers? And he explains that just financially, cruisers may not be the best choice. I don't think I've ever bought many. They're not my favorite unit to buy, but I always utilize the ones that I start the game with. So cruisers are a good unit. Aircraft carrier. Everyone's favorite. This little dude costs 16 IPCs. And again, he has a movement of 2. He has no attack value, which means he cannot escort transports through blockades. He has a defense of 2. He can carry 2 units. He takes 2 hits to sink. Now, if you get super carriers, he now takes 3 hits to sink. But, anyway, carrier carries aircraft. Aircraft carrier carries aircraft. Who would have thought it? Crazy. There's a lot of information on page 44 of your rulebook about the aircraft carrier. But pretty much that's all you need to know. There's a lot of terminology, a lot of verbiage that might confuse you, but basically carries planes, all right? It has no attack, has 2 defense, it costs 16, and there's an upgrade for it that makes it better, a technology rather. Next is the battleship. Battleships are great. I love battleships, but they're a little bit expensive for my tastes. I'm a humble man, all right? I don't have a lot, and what I do have was probably given to me or sold to me at a very low price. I grew up kind of poorish, so I'm very frugal, and I don't have many nice things. But again, what I do have, I've either worked my tail off for and bought, or it's been given to me. I like to call that blessed. For example, I've had, let's say I'm 31, and I've had maybe 9 or 10 cars in my lifetime already, and I've only paid for 2 of them. So, praise the Lord. Anyway, battleship, it's pretty expensive. It costs 20 IPCs. It attacks and defends at a 4. It is the strongest unit in the game. It can take 2 hits. It's a capital ship. It can do offshore bombardment, meaning if you send a transport with units on it in an amphibious assault, he can shoot at the land units on the defending shoreline. He also has an air defense. He has built-in anti-aircraft artillery guns, and so much like a AAA gun on land, over here we've got the AAA, he can shoot up to 3 planes. So if you have 4 battleships, you can shoot 12 planes if that's what they're sending. He does have the tech upgrade of Super Battleship, which would make him shoot his AAAs at a 2 or less, because otherwise it's just a 1. And he would get to fire 2 dice, 1 at 4 and 1 at 2. That includes for offshore bombardments. So if you have super battleships doing offshore bombardment, that is huge. You get a lot of shots. That sounds like a sink upstairs. Anyway, last but not least, everyone's favorite unit to argue over is a submarine. This unit costs 6 to purchase. It attacks at a 2 and defends at a 1. Again, it can move at 2. Submarines have several characteristics. Most of them are canceled by the presence of an enemy destroyer, so they have the ability to target select. I'm not going to go into detail on that because it's in my target select video, so make sure that you check that out. They can submerge. Submarine has the option of submerging. It can do this anytime it would otherwise make a strike or target select, Before any dice are rolled, you can say, hey, I'm going to submerge. If you do submerge, then you can't disrupt convoys. If you do submerge, then you're not involved in any combat that may occur. You cannot submerge if there's a destroyer present. You can treat hostile sea zones as friendly, as long as there is no destroyer there. So let's take a look at 58. All right, so I'm going to put this cruiser in 58 and the sub in 75. And he says, I want to go to 57. He can go 1, 2, no problem. I don't have to stop and fight that guy, even if we're at war. I don't have to stop and fight him. But if there's a destroyer, destroyers have the ability to find me, so I have to stop and fight him, or I have to go around him. So he can sneak through. They do not block enemy movement, so if this cruiser was here and he wanted to go 1, 2, he could. He would not have to fight my sub. Although if he's moving, that means he's the attacker. That's a weak defender. You might want to hit it, but you might just want to sneak past it. Who knows? So it doesn't block enemy movement. The sub can never, ever, 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 ever hit a plane. Cannot ever hit a plane. However, planes can hit a sub only if there's a destroyer present. So if Japanese planes were to attack this sub, they couldn't attack this sub. If the destroyer was here, then they could attack the sub, but otherwise they can't. He does have the technology of the upgrade of super submarines, which means he now attacks at a 3, which is crazy. And then there's some things regarding movement that he can do that I'm going to point out really quick. So submarines have special movement abilities in comparison to other ships when it comes to canals and straits, etc. I'm going to zoom out just a hair. Okay. So the Suez Canal. In order to move the Suez Canal, you have to control both sides. So the Brits can move through here, easy peasy lemon squeezy, okay? If one side falls, you can't move through. No ships can move through. Sub, he can do what the regular ships can do. But over here in Gibraltar, if Gibraltar is Allied owned or Axis owned, it doesn't matter. Submarines from either side can go in or out. Where's my sub at? Here's my sub. So let's say the Germans take Gibraltar. This British ship, which you can't see, Germany owns Gibraltar. This destroyer cannot enter the Med. He can't. But this sub doesn't have to follow the rules of the Gibraltar Strait. He can come in, no problem. That's really the only place that there's an exception for submarines. The Danish Straits don't work that way. The Turkish Straits don't work that way. So it's really just that one strait. I think that's it for unit profiles. This is actually going to be the last video in the series. If you have more ideas for more videos, just leave me a comment and we'll go from there. I'm the chaplain. I'll be praying for you.